Welcome, 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 everybody. Welcome to You've Championed Yourself. Who are you? I'm Chris Ferguson, your host. It has always been a dream of mine to showcase ordinary people doing extraordinary things in their lives, who've taken their dreams or ideas and turned it into their reality. As we know, there's so many people who don't reach beyond their struggles, their pains, and traumas and give up on life. They lose hope. There are those few who can walk through their obstacles and challenges, not knowing where it's going to take them. They trust themselves enough not to give up, to do the follow through in their personal life, their careers, and in relationships. This is what I call a champion. Today, I have an amazing individual. I call him my twin. His name's Roger Burnley, and he is an amazing, intuitive empowerment life coach. Let's bring Roger into the podcast. Hi, twin.
Hi, Christy. You have no idea what you just read and what you just talked about, because this is, and on this day is so perfect. It's so perfect for me to be here because I just finished my meditation, which I do every day, and I did my automatic writing. I channel information, and I just sent out the message, and it was called Your Struggle Was Internal. Your struggle is internal, because this is where we all are. This is what we're all moving through in our life. We always do, but now especially we're moving through it, that struggle, because we're supposed to own who we are and what we're here to do, what we're here to cause the world to become, which is more and better.
I agree. I say if you want to be better, you have to do better.
Yes.
It's that simple. And it's not that I have to, it's not that everybody has to do, that I have the expectations everybody else has to do it. I have to do better.
Right.
I have to be better if I want better.
Yep.
And so I love that you said that. Roger, let's talk about your backstory. How you got to the point you are now. Yeah. How did it start out?
And it's so funny for me to start out with saying those words, because I never would have said them to you a few years ago. I have struggled with my spirituality my entire life. And I knew we come in we each have this connectedness, this intuitive sides of us that tell us where to go in our lives and all of that. But sometimes we don't trust it. I couldn't trust it. I can remember I was frightened most of my life. I can't, because things came to me that I couldn't understand, and I couldn't put them together. And so I just wanted to resist them. And every time I resisted something, because I know now that it was guidance coming to me that I didn't understand, but every time I resisted, I would have something show up in my life that was a disaster. I would have an illness or almost all of those things to say, no, move in this direction. Then every other career that I tried, I did all these different careers. To end up here in this position didn't seem right. And that's why I've also said in my title, I call it Intuitive Empowerment Life Purpose Coach, because in my life, those are the steps that I had to take. That's what it felt to put all of that together, to find my life purpose, which I know everyone has that, and everyone has one that is valuable once they understand who they are.
I love that. It also helps them find their worth. And I think if people understand their worth, they find their value. They find the purpose, because it presents themselves to them. As an intuitor, as you say, the intuitive empowerment life purpose coach, you've been doing this for a while.
In different ways, but I wouldn't tell you what it was. I couldn't tell you what I was doing because I didn't know at the time. I was just doing what felt right. I was just doing what was innate, was within me. Every position that I had, I could never figure it out. It was something that always elevated me to some position of leadership, moving up to being in front of folks for some. And it was so bizarre because a lot of them were very different industries that I should have known nothing about. and I thought, wow, how is this happening? But all I did was I went back to my instincts. I'll tell you one story because I want your listeners to understand this. When I left school, I had no direction. I walked out of college, a year and a half into college. I just said, this isn't it. And I left. I didn't know where I was going. Everybody figured I was nuts, especially my parents. And I didn't know what I was going to do. But then I got a job as an accountant. 19 years old, I was being this accountant because I had some skills. I had something that I could do, and they gave me a lot of money. They paid me a lot of money so I could stay there for 4 years and never figure out what I was meant to do next. Then at some point I moved on to the next thing because I was being directed again that I didn't understand. But then the next thing was a beauty salon. I mean, what? I'm doing accounting. Now I'm going to go manage a beauty salon. I know nothing about this business at all. And then I was thrown into a position where I had to take care of it. And this was a big business. A lot of people. I had 35 people on the staff. I mean, the whole bit. And I go, what am I going to do? Because someone was supposed to train me, but they got sick and had to leave. So here I am sitting again in a position where I have to be a leader, that I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, okay, I said, let me go back to me. And I acted on my instincts. At some point, this particular business became so big. It was part of a conglomerate. This company owned 500 salons. And then what happened was they said, you're making more money than all of the other salons, all the 500 salons. What is it? And so they would fly me into New York. I was living in Chicago at the time. They would fly me into New York to ask me what I was doing. I said, I don't know. They did this twice. They did. I don't know. I don't know what it is. And so then later on, years later, and they actually moved me to New York later to work at someplace else. But anyway, during that whole thing, years later, I figured out what it was. I didn't know anything. I had to rely on my resources. I had to rely on me. And so what I did, the only thing that I did that made a difference, I would remember the client's name.
That is important.
Yes.
Because you gave them value. You gave them worth.
Yes. And I didn't know. And that's why the business grew. Years at Christina took me to figure that out. But that's what it was, that we each had, our instincts, our what is within us, we're each given something that we're meant to live out and present to the world in some way. But sometimes that becomes scary when we don't know it, and if we have some fear of the unknown. You see, because as we evolve, we're always moving into that unknown, that next part of who we are.
Uncertainty is a huge barrier in most people's lives because it causes them. There's freeze, flight, or fight.
Yeah.
And most people freeze.
Yes.
When they should actually embrace and say, show me, let's go on this adventure. Let's see what happens.
Yes. Which is why I do the work that I do. Because I froze so many times.
Just because of you.
I froze so many times, and I said, I can't, I know this is too strange and weird. No, I can't do this. I kept going through that. And even when I had the results of the work that I was doing, I could see it happening. But eventually, and I'm just saying this because some people may take a path in their life where it takes them a while before they get to that right place. But everyone has that right place. Absolutely everyone. If they're willing to go for it. Sometimes, like you said, we can freeze and stop and stay there. Yeah. Fortunately, I did not do that. But one of the incidents that became very powerful, even though I still pushed it away, when I was in New York, I was teaching a class, and it was on something, it was modeling now. Okay, I wasn't doing something different because I used to model a bit. And so then I was teaching a class on it. But I'm looking at these kids, because I had all guys at that time. And I thought, they're not going to be models, all of these folks. And I know that it's their parents who want them to do something. So they're paying for this and putting them in there with this pipe dream of what they think is going to happen. I understand that. But I said, but I can't be that person. I have to give them something more. And so I stood there one day and I got up in front of the classroom and I said, hey, I know you guys want to be models, but you may not all go there, but I want to give you something that could help you with no matter what you do. So let's talk about personal development. Yeah. Let's start talking, because that you'll use anywhere. And I forgot about it. 15 years later, I'm in Los Angeles. I'm in a clothing store, and a guy comes up to me and he says, "Are you Roger Burnley?" And I go, "Yes." And he says, "I'd like to thank you because you saved my life." I said, "What are you talking about?" I mean, I'm like in shock at this moment. He said, "I was a teenager. I was in your class in New York, and I was going to commit suicide. I had everything lined up. I had all the stuff I was going to do it the next day. And you said something to me that day that changed my mind. And I just thought, what? And it was still uncareful, Christine. I got to tell you, I still pushed it away. I thought, no, I couldn't have done that. See, this is what we do a lot. It's difficult for us individually to believe that we had this purpose or came in with something that we were meant to offer the world. And I couldn't find that. And I said, because I couldn't find that, I have to help other people find it, is what it is, It took so long. But that was a moment I'll never forget.
I love that, because that's happened to me dealing with kids. And most people don't realize how often kids think about or lose hope in their life.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And so I love the fact that the parents were at least trying to find something to help them.
Yeah.
Because if they hadn't, where would he be today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's a huge, huge blessing, but it also is divine timing in my understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I'm so glad you said that, because I missed so much of it. We have those things that show up to give us confirmation, And so I know now that incident was meant to be confirmation for me that this path that I was on was the correct one, where I should have been going. But I still was not accepting of myself. My empowerment had not been developed. So I couldn't believe that I was somebody who had something, you see. And this is why my focus became working on empowerment at first, because I said, you got to have this sense of empowerment before you can then go out and do the things that you really feel that you want to do. The empowerment is what will lead to your courage.
Yes.
And that's really what it takes.
It is how we show up for ourselves. I love how you said that, because so many people don't realize, they just go through life and say, well, okay, I've got this job. It's comfortable. I'm in my comfort zone. I'm not going to do anything to cause any waves, but I'm just going to exist. And they forget to dream.
Yes. Yes. And I want to say this, because this is why I was so interested in you. I told you, because knowing your background and what you did and all that. And I have a nephew who is like that. He's a cop, and he's so different in the way that, and he just knows it. He just knows that he's going to go out and do his job in a new way. He looks at individuals in someone says, well, maybe they just didn't understand what was going on. Maybe he has this compassion, it's straight. Even his partners would look at him like, what are you doing? But he's made some big changes. He's seen, and it was difficult for him, because he knew that he would be judged as not fitting in with what most people, which most cops would even think they were doing, or how people perceived most policemen, or police, law enforcement. Yeah. It was just so extraordinary to see that. And so it was great to hear, there are more of you who do that.
Yes, there are. There's a lot more of us. Unfortunately, back in 1983, I wrote a poem, and it was published in the Wyoming Peace Officers Association. It was called Cops Are People Too. And at that point, I had learned in life, because I started in law enforcement in 1980, and I had learned that they were judging you for what the uniform you wore, for the badge on your chest. They had no idea who you were behind it, or your struggles, or how hard it was for you to get to where you got, and the things that you overcame. And they just wanted to judge you by the uniform you wore. And it's so important now, if ever in the past, that people understand that cops are responsive. I mean, order a pizza and dial 911, which is going to get you first. I mean, let's be real, because there's so many people that, are just done with being, harmed and killed, and people, everything they hate, they're doing to law enforcement.
Yes.
And so at that point in time, it's if you want to identify law enforcement as the bad side, then let's look at humanity and see what humanity's doing to itself. Because law enforcement has always been reactive. There's good. Let me just say this. There's good and bad in every profession. I'm not going to say that everybody is perfect. I'm not going to say that. However, the majority are.
Yeah.
It's always that few that ruin
Hmm.
it for everybody else. And that doesn't matter what profession you're in or what you
Hmm.
do, it's how you treat people.
Which is why we need you. See, because there's certain people within, like you said, in every single profession, that's what goes on. But then there's certain people who will shine the light on it, and you were placed there to shine the light in this industry, because this is the transition that our world is moving through now. And so you were just a little ahead of the pack, but
Well, I never colored with inside the lines. I'm sorry, I couldn't do
yeah.
that.
But understanding this change that we're going through,
Mhm.
the disruption that we're feeling, the conflict, the chaos, is because people are trying to hold on to who they were.
Absolutely. And see, the thing is we just entered into the Aquarian age, and we haven't
Hmm.
been in the Aquarian age in
Never.
like 50,000 years. It's been that
Yes.
long. And we were in the Piscean age, and the Piscean
Hmm.
age was all about power, greed,
Yep. Hmm.
money, evil, control. It was all about that. And there was so many things that were suppressed. There was so many people, both
Hmm.
male and female, all
Yes.
colors, all races, that
Hmm.
were suppressed along the way in the name of religion.
Yes.
And I believe that this is my personal belief. I believe that people have become disassociated with religion
Hmm.
because they're finding the hypocrisy in it.
Yes. We are this.
I
I
told
don't.
you we were twins.
It's crazy. That's what we're here to heal. We need to look at our contradictions, our hypocrisy, and we have to heal that within ourselves.
Yes.
If we expect to see that in the world, because we're that powerful, and we're just coming to find that out. So, yeah. You'll see there's so much more that has been coming through recently, and it is exactly what you're saying about breaking down those old norms. And then I was told what I was given to help in that, and I thought, oh, really, is that what's going on? We have to come into acceptance now.
Well, we have to understand it's that old paradigm is no longer exists. It's
Right.
gone.
Right.
So where do we go now? How do we navigate forward?
Yes.
And it is going within and saying,
Yes.
who am I? What am I? What's my purpose? Because we all have a purpose on this earth.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it all starts from love,
Yeah.
unconditional love.
Mhm.
Because the man that killed my brother, who was a drunk driver, the hardest thing I had to do was forgive him for killing my brother
Hmm.
and see him as a human being
Yes.
and not accepting or um, allowing his bad behavior to be excused.
Hmm.
And when you can get to that point of forgiveness to everybody,
Yes.
but it was more about me because it was the energy I was holding on to as a young child. But, in my life, there was a lot of junk. There was a lot of
Hmm.
junk. And so it just added another layer to that onion of the junk, the
Hmm.
anger,
Right.
not trusting anybody. I actually told my husband when I turned 30, I said, oh my God, do I trust myself now? And
Hmm.
he looked at me like I was crazy. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, well, growing up, all I heard was all the teenagers and the older, 20, 23, 24-year-olds say, well, you can't trust anybody over 30. So
Right.
when I hit 30, I'm like, why not trust myself now? My husband said, he says, you lost your mind.
I
And it was
love
like,
that.
no, but honey, understand, this is everything I heard as a kid. This was
Exactly.
during that 70s, during that, don't trust anybody era. And especially if they're over 30, because they're the system.
Mhm. Yes, that's so funny. You're speaking of that collective unconscious. And this is what happened when I was on my program that I have now. I channeled all of it, and I didn't know that I was doing that. But then it was revealed to me, no, you did this because you wanted to use it now. You had to use it in the world at this time. And they said you had several. You all have help. We have access to information. We all have access to information, infinite intelligence, whatever we want to call it, but we all do. It's like no one comes into the world with empty. You have connections, we just have to allow them to come in. And so they said, we gave you Carl Jung because he came up with the collective unconscious. You, as you move through your civilization, as you move through history, individuals, you come up, you discover things, and you're meant to. That's why the world looks the way that it does. You take the stuff that was there, you build upon it, and then it changes and it becomes better. That's what you're doing now. So we gave you part of the collective unconscious because you must understand that's what many of you are moving through now.
Mm-hmm.
This old junk that we don't even remember because it's from our parents, our ancestors, all of those who came before. And so it can be heavy. Mm-hmm. This because of all the shifts that are going on.
Well, the one thing that I've had to do in my life and help others do with my clients is get beyond that generational trauma.
Yes.
Because you brought up the ancestors. And the fact is it also could be past lives. It could also be things that, have happened that you didn't learn that lesson. So in this life, it's being reflected back to you.
Right.
And in that, it's a huge thing. But I just trust and believe that what is meant for me will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it with my heart of hearts and my ultimate knowing.
Yes.
And it has never failed me since I was 8.
Yeah.
And one of the spirit guides that I had was Geronimo.
Ah. Okay.
Geronimo was Apache. He was a medicine man and he was a war chief. And he was considered bulletproof because the soldiers had shot him 10, 15 times and not one bullet penetrated his skin. And most people don't know him. But with that day that my mother dropped us off and I'm chasing her out on foot, she's driving off and she accelerated and I stopped. That's when he came to me and said, I'm here. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I don't know who you are, but my life just went to hell in a handbasket just right now. And I had the uncertainty, again, not knowing. And the one thing is you don't leave children to their imagination because they're brutal. They're worse than any adult could ever be.
Right. Let me talk about this week in particular. I was given the message this morning. They said, okay, you're going to be moving through a whole bunch of emotions in the next several days because there's a lot of explosive kind of energy that's in the world because it's coming up. Everything is coming up for review. And many things are that we thought looked a particular way. We're going to see, no, it was a little bit something different. That's what we're going to start to see. But it's all about, as you said, this particular period we're moving through is we're removing some of that disruption, the imbalance in power where it went there. And so things were covered up. And so what we have now is those who know this is going on and those in power and said, no, we're going to hold on to this. So let's cover up things. We're not going to let you see stuff. And no, because we're afraid. And then there are those of us who have lived our lives knowing we want to really be hopeful and do more, because that's why we're here this time. And so we have not really, we're still inching into owning more of that, but we're going to do more of it because it'll be easier. It'll start to become easier. That's due to the galactic shifts that are going on.
Yes.
Just the planetary shift, all of that. So.
Well, Pluto and Saturn are finally aligned for the first time in 26,000 years. In fact, the last time this happened was Pope Mark left the church because he didn't like the way it was being run, the Catholic Church, and stepped away. That's how long ago it was that these two slow-moving planets. So so when that song, "The Age of Aquarius," when the moon. And I can hear the lyrics in my head. It's happening, and I'm so glad to be here.
Yes.
But how do you help your clients develop courage and confidence, Roger?
By sharing my journey, by sharing. It became very clear to me, and it was so uncomfortable. It was so amazingly uncomfortable because I had to move. Part of what I had to do was move through my doubt and disbelief so that I could help other people, because I was given the gift of receiving information and understanding it and all of that, but I didn't fully embrace it. And I kept holding back because, oh no, people are going to think it's really strange, except when I'm seeing the results. So now what I do when I'm doing my groups and all of that, I say, this is where I stop. This is what I did. So don't judge yourself. You're going to keep going. I just need to give them the guidance, the encouragement, and just my experience, and without any shame. I said, we're at the place in each of us, everyone that's here, it has to understand that they have to embrace every aspect of them. The stuff that they were shameful about, they thought they made a mistake or failures or any of that, because it never happened. You're just trying to get to the place to understand and accept yourself. And this is a pivotal moment in our world and in their individual evolutionary journey, where they're going to be confronted with, this is who I want to be now. And this is who I was always meant to be. And we have the acceptance is what's challenging.
It is, because we do so much more harm to ourselves by overthinking things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember that when I was, and we label ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
And when I labeled myself as that delinquent, because that's what society called me, when I labeled myself as that unwanted, abandoned, nobody loves, and then you accept that, those are hard things to reverse. I mean, it truly, truly is.
Yeah.
And the path is like, okay, how many brick walls do you have to hit before you realize that you're beating the junk out of yourself and messing up your head, you know?
Yeah. My guides told me, my Wilhelm told the other day, said, oh, let's have fun. Let's do something. And so they told me, go to Facebook and make a post and make it a quiz. And you're going to ask a question. You're going to say, which cat is better? You just want everybody to answer the question, which cat is better? And then, but you cannot answer with anything that is a personal preference, meaning that it's because you like this cat. No, you can't do that. So you just have to tell us which cat is better. No one answered the question. They would come back. And so one guy made a joke. He says, a Labrador. He goes, well, I don't like cats, so it's hard for me to do that. I said, okay, great. You didn't get it. And then another lady came in and she said, well, no, it's this cat. It's this alpaca or something, I think it was. Maybe because they don't shed and they're not allergic. And then they don't bother you. They don't get all over you when you're trying to do something. I said, well, that's a personal preference, because some people want their cats to get all over them. And then I said, so I'm just waiting for somebody to give the answer. Nobody could come up with the answer. And then we said, because there isn't any.
Right.
And so why don't you see that in people?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that, because well, and this is why I say, I am just a human being.
Mm-hmm.
I don't judge, I don't assume,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't label.
Mm-hmm.
I'm that observer. I want to be a part of the planet and be that server.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come from that perspective, it's not about anything else than being with other human beings and seeing people as human beings, not their choices, not the labels, not the understandings. And so I love the fact that you just brought that up. And it's 11:11 here, just so you know.
Oh, I love it. Oh, perfect. That's
you know, we talk. Okay, let's talk about synchronicities, because now the universe is saying, okay, come on, guys, let's talk about synchronicities.
Yeah.
How many synchronicities did you have in your life until it finally took you to say, oh my gosh, why am I not paying attention?
That's why I transparent, because Christine, they're so embarrassing, because there were so many of them that I just could not go to, that I just could not understand or accept. But it's good. But then they said, no, you live this life because you wanted to have that experience, because now you're helpful. Now you can do it. And then the one thing that's come, I started doing live channelings, in the last year, and with my Wilhelm. And so it always surprised me, things that would come out during the sessions. And it was explained to me that, the first part of my life was filled with tragedy. It was filled with all kinds of crap that I needed to move through. I mean, at 12 years old, with my first near-death experience, when I fell through the ice in the river and I couldn't swim. Oh yeah, and the terror and the fear that got implanted in me, and then that reverberated throughout my life. And then I had so many other instances like that. And they're saying, well, you survived because you were supposed to do something. You survived. We're trying to give you things to wake up a little bit. It just, so anyway, the first part of my life was moving through all of that junk, which a lot of it was generational, as you said. It was old stuff. I had no memory, but I agreed to move through it. And that's what my life was. And to get to this place at this time in our world, because this was a planned time that our world was going to shift and it was going to change. And we can look at that. They started showing me how I knew this, because they even took me back to the instances where they said, we told you at the end of the Maya calendar what was going to come in next. And you're in that period now, bringing in a new world. So it's just been a lot.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. But the thing is one of the things that you spoke about was getting through the junk. And I, again, like you, twin, had the same thing, but mine started at 4.
Yeah.
Evidently, I was a little more thick-headed than you. I'm just saying, because no, Christine, you just more observant. You were aware of it. I just pushed it away because I can remember when I was a child, before I was quite young, I would have visions that would come at night, and it would frighten me. So the fear started setting in at that point. You had something a little different than before. You had a different kind of awareness, and this is what they always give me this information. Our chronological ages have nothing to do with our evolutionary journey. And I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. But when I'm arguing with the creator, because I want to stay there, and he's pumping me out because he's like, no, I'm not done with you yet. That's what I was saying. I think I'm a little more thick-headed, because
I don't know.
I didn't. I didn't want to. I was trying to understand, but how much do you really truly comprehend on this at 4?
Yeah. No.
And then when you have your imaginary friends, how many times were you told that, oh, they're just imaginary friends, they don't really exist?
Yeah, exactly.
So the traditions and the cultures and the programming were also a part of how you accepted your understanding.
Yep.
And that made it even harder to accept it.
Right. Yes. Oh, yeah. And all of it is, they wanted me, when we were doing some of the sessions, they said, think of your DNA. They wanted us to use that. And they said, because I had my DNA done, actually did the test and all of that. And it was shocking to me, because I thought, if everyone in the world had this done, because we have the technology now, things would change, because they would see that they are connected to every race, every different, everywhere. And I said, they keep saying, Roger is still trying to figure out how he could be 14% Scottish.
Well, let me tell you a secret. Most people don't know this, but I did my genealogy and I traced my family back. And my 4th generation great-grandfather lived in Kentucky. While they were pushing the Native Americans across from South Carolina, North Carolina, across Georgia, Tennessee, a woman broke away from the soldiers. My great-great-great-grandfather hid her. And she was so grateful that she married him, because he was risking his life for her, and he didn't know her. But she was Black Cherokee. And so the thing is when I was talking with some of my Native friends, and I have a really, really good friend, and he looked at me and he says, you got a lot of Native in you for a white girl. And it was like, just call me the United Nations. That's all I'm saying. Just call me the United Nations, because we are all connected.
Exactly. Yes.
We are all connected to Mother Earth. And when you understand that they created all of us from the same cell,
right?
How do you have that argument to say, well, you're this, you're that, you're this? That is the mindset. It's not reality.
Right. And that was the other thing they wanted us to understand during this time, that we're all going to be reacting from those energies and those old patterns that sometimes we're not consciously aware of, but they're within us. And we're meant to move through them. We're meant to understand that they were restrictions and limitations. And we only wanted to be alive to move through restrictions and limitations. That was the only purpose.
Some of us were just trying to survive, Roger. I'm just saying. We didn't even get to the part of trying to understand the limitations.
Right. Yeah. And and then if we had moved through the limitations, then we survived. And the thing is, and it keeps coming up because they gave me this message a long time ago, and I'm starting to understand it. Two things. They said, first of all, the thing that you typically fear the most is your gift. I go, what? Why? Because it's still there and you're still trying to go for it. So that's okay. And then it's just this kind of constant fear we have of that unknown. So we're moving steps. And they gave us one thing then that talked about cycles, which we are in right now. And everybody should understand that these cycles mean sometimes we're a little up, sometimes we're a little down. And that's purposeful, because now we're moving into different dimensions. We don't completely understand it, but we're ascending. And those changes in our velocity can be unnerving at times, meaning the way how we experience ourselves. And that's what went on for me. I got to tell you this. I don't know and I want people to see it because I just saw it the other night. There was an interview with Will Smith that Oprah did. Mm-hmm. And that it's unfortunate. I wish more people could see it because it's on Apple TV, and I know a lot of people don't see that and get it. But it's such a brilliant interview because he wrote a book, and this if more people would do this, there would be such healing. He wanted to take stock of everything he had done his entire life, and he wanted it all out there, and he wanted to share all of it. He wasn't going to hold anything back. This book is Will, and it's everything. Oprah says, wow, you went deep. She goes, yeah, I'm not hiding anything. I want to know. And so this is life. He talks about, because all the perceptions that everyone might have had about him because of being this big movie star and all of that. No, he said, I had fear. I had to move through the fear. I had all of this, and he did things he wasn't pleased with, and he found himself doing stuff he couldn't understand. And the shame and embarrassment, then he went through a spiritual revolution. He really went through a process of evolving consciously. And then at the end of the interview, it's so brilliant. He says, you'll love this, Chris. He says, I know my mission.
Ah, yes, I do love that. Yes. But I want to tell you a story now. There was an individual that when I was 8 years old and I had lost who I was, that was a boxer. I'll give you that clue. Mm-hmm. And he was outspoken. He stood his ground. He showed responsibility. He took accountability for his actions. He said, this is not my war and I'm not going to go. Mm-hmm. He stood in his power. At one point, he had fought some white guy down in Mississippi, and the sheriff showed up when he won that boxing fight and said, I'm arresting you for aggravated assault. Look what you did to that boxer. And he said, go ahead and arrest me and I'll own your sheriff's department when you're done. Because this was an organized boxing through the Boxing Association. So if you're going to arrest anybody, they set it up. You need to deal with that. So the fact is he became the voice that I couldn't have. He became that integrity that I was willing to stand in. And I finally met him and was able to do a detail because he was speaking at a local mall. And I spent the most 7 days. I spent 7 days, and they were the most amazing days in my life. And I had the opportunity to tell this man how he was my childhood hero. He spoke the things I couldn't speak. He was able to stand in his power, which I dreamed of being able to do in my own life. And Muhammad Ali was an amazing individual.
And I was going to say, did you know Miss Cassius?
I did. I even met his daughter, Latoya, and she's an amazing individual. But the things that he set in place for all of us that were throwaways, for all of us that were unwanted, all of us that didn't know how to speak, he spoke. And he withstood all the anger of the world.
There was a message. Yeah. I wish I had this. I wish I knew you were going to tell this story because I would have found this beforehand. And I'm going to attempt to. I'm going to look. I'm going to see if it's here. But if not, it's okay. I can explain it. When I was growing up, it was a very, how can I say it was a very challenging time with racial division that was going on. I was right at the time when he was Cassius Clay to us. Is that time when he was? Yeah, I wish I had that. Anyway, he was to certain people, to certain Black people, he was also a little too frightening. You see, because we had been told to stay down, to not speak up, to not own who we were. And so here's this guy coming in and saying, oh, no, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to stand in my power, as you saw. And but because of my family, this what we know, you can't do that. Hold in, don't be shown, don't. And so I formed this, oh, I got to stay, Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali, or whatever he's doing. No, this is frightening. That's where I went. And this is so, I'm so glad you brought this up, because I didn't understand what he had given me, as you just pointed out. Because just a few years ago, my guide said, he said you were the greatest. And I said, oh, that's what to see this man in front of us looking like me saying, I am the greatest. Mm-hmm. Why can't I say that? You see, and that's the thing what was coming up. That's the pushback that I was feeling, because someone was presenting to me who intuitively, innately, I knew I was, but I wasn't able to accept it. And so I'm going to push it away. And then to realize it later. So, yeah, thanks.
But the thing is when you were talking about, the visions, but he did step out. And, when dealing with kids, they would say, well, he was a deserter.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the men that decided to leave this country and go to Canada illegally. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then now are asking to be forgiven because of their choices then. Mm-hmm. But this man spent 2 years of his life in prison for saying, this is not my war. I'm not doing it.
Right.
How many people would that happen to today? Mm-hmm.
No.
So the fact is he knew, and the only way I can say this, I feel this, is that mm-hmm. he knew that wasn't for him. Mm-hmm. And he stood in his power. But and this is where I have a problem. I don't watch much TV, but I have a problem with actors who want to take political sides and use their platform as something to promote division. Mm-hmm. I have a problem with that. I have a problem with censorship. I have a problem with the news putting out only what they want the world to see or understand. There's so much more to the world. There's so much more to people. There's so much more to life.
Right.
But it doesn't sell.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. I had to take the stance of, I knew that I wanted to know what's happening everywhere. And because I know that we have to look at, we can't be isolated. This is part of this period also, this change, is that we're no longer isolated. It's a global, we live in a global community. We're understanding that because we are all one, and every civilization, as we move through our transitions, we come to get that a little bit more. And this one is where we're supposed to look at the rest of the world as well. It's not just us. And so, because there's so much more strength in oneness and coming together, which is what they would always say, that, you had the pandemic, you created the pandemic to come together, but sometimes you're using it for division. You're using it for division, but you were meant to come together. And then they say, you just do the same thing all the time, because 100 years ago, you did exactly the opposite. You took different positions. You had different sides, exactly the reverse of what you have today. And they were using that as examples to show that we go through, as the world, as the planet or whatever, we go through evolution, and it's different. And that's where we are right now. This is a big one.
Well, the thing is I think with the difference in the roles of reporters nowadays compared to back when we were growing up.
Yes.
Because I remember seeing John F. Kennedy's being killed.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
remember seeing Martin Luther King killed.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Bobby King killed.
You're talking about the year that got me. Yeah.
And so the fact is the bottom line is that that's what I'm talking about, censorship. It's not that we have to show deaths, but there was no rewind back then.
Right,
and then came the cover up, and everybody saw the cover up because all the people that were in the street kept pointing to the grass. Well, there was nobody over there. Law enforcement said, the FBI said, the Warren Commission said there was no, and which that's how conspiracy theory starts, because people who saw it, people who know it, saying, now you're calling me a liar. Now I'm the problem. But it didn't fit their agenda.
Right.
So it's get beyond the agendas. Let's get to humanity, because when you start preaching about the things people do that are good, it's going to bring more good.
Right.
It's going to elevate more life and humanity, and understanding that, you know what? We are twins in this life of humanity on planet Earth.
Exactly. What I had to come to, Christine, I was very clear about this, and I hope people will get this. We are going to have our preferences in this life of what we want to see and what we want to be and all of that. And then when we start to own that, sometimes we can go into judgment, because we'll see other people and then we'll start to judge them if they're not holding our particular preference or ideas or whatever it is about that. And so we have to come to this place now where we understand we're going to have our preferences. We're going to have our differences from a bunch of other people, but we're all adding something to the collective energy of the world. And so we have to figure out, if I'm going to tell what my particular truth is, I know the way that I'm going to say it. Is it going to be a loving comment that's going to offer hope and inspiration, or is it going to be hate? And I will know which one I'm doing if I'm stopping to be mindful and know the intent before I take an action or say a word.
And I love that. It is taking the pause. It is getting beyond the limiting beliefs. And so that's the reason why I was bringing up the censorship. I watch the news that I watch is not in this country.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I do watch the news, but it's not of this country, because in this country, it is really, a censorship. I just want the truth. Real, raw, and rare. I just want the truth. I don't need it sugar-coated. I don't need it from your perspective. I want to know what happened.
Yeah. Yes. And let me interpret
exactly. Let me accept it. I think they see humanity as being ignorant. Because they want to give you this dialogue and this programming, this indoctrination into their perception. And forget that we're individuals too. We have a mind, we have a brain, and we're more intelligent than they give us credit for.
There's a message that I'm going back to the message they gave me a long time ago, and it says, money, love, power, and control. It says, those are the things that you're always working with, that you're always dealing with. And they said, first of all, you got to understand the money has no value of it. It has no intrinsic value. It doesn't mean anything, but you use it to start to understand who you are. You use it, and everything you're doing is about developing your soul, about developing who you are on that deeper level. And so you're all doing that in different ways. And right now, you're trying to come together so that you can cause your world to evolve and become more. And the way that you can do that, they gave me something to put on the, let me remember. It says, how to heal. I can remember how to heal yourself and your world. So first of all, tell the truth. Just tell the truth. And so, and the truth is, and you have to distinguish truth from opinion. And the way you do that is that your truth will have, facts that you can verify. You'll have those facts. So that's it. So understand that you're doing that, and then decide that what you come up with after you have that your particular truth of whatever that is, give it back to the world, but do it in a way that it's going to make a difference, that it's going to help.
Yes, I love that. And that's exactly where I come from. That's exactly what I do, because the fact is if you give me the opportunity to process it, I'm going to come up with everything from a position of unconditional love. everything.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But then I go within and I say, how is this affecting me? How is this triggering me? Why am I being triggered by this?
Mm-hmm.
What's that understanding? Because it's if I'm triggered by it, then there's something I need to go within and to find out why.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So Roger, give my audience 3 tips on how to become empowered in life.
The first tip would be to realize that you're going to resist it at first. And that's okay, because we come into the world to evolve. We're not going to know what that is. And that that step of evolution requires us to make movement. And so depending on how we have dealt with the unknown, might be a little scary, but we're meant to do that. We're meant to move, and every person has that. So that's would be the first one. Then the other one is the other tip would be, do not compare yourself to another soul. You can. That's where we start destroying ourselves, because we came in to be different. We came in to be individuals. This is what in my program they said, we gave you, your one philosopher came up with individuation. Why did we? That's why we gave you that. And they said in one message, if more of you would understand that, your life and your world would be much better, because individuation means that you need to have every single type of person with beliefs and differences and all of that, so you come together to make a better whole. That's really what it is. And then the other thing would be, when you're using judgment, you've kind of stopped yourself a little bit. You've lost. If you get to judgment, and the judgment's going to be on yourself a lot, you're going to have a lot of judgment. And they said, and the last thing they said, if you want it, you all want to be authentic, and the way that you will reach authenticity is to let go of self-judgment.
I love that. Roger. So I ask this question of all my podcasters that come on. Sit back, relax for a second, close your eyes, and take a deep breath in. And I want you to connect with your 5-year-old child. And what would they say of you today? How they feel?
They are so proud of me, because I was so scared. You look at where you are. We are so proud of you now.
That is amazing. And usually, go ahead. Did you have
that? No, that was it. That was exactly it. Because I saw that scared kid, and I'm looking at this person now, knowing this and knowing the journey. And so anyone who's listening, understand your journey is going to be worth it.
I love that. Roger, I'm so honored, and I have been so excited to get you on this podcast. It has been amazing. It has been amazing.
Thank you so much, Christine. It was just such a pleasure.
Hang on one second. It takes a special kind of individual to dream their thoughts, their ideas, and turn it into their reality. Roger Burnley, you have done just that. You stepped past your fears, you stayed the course, and you had the courage to follow through to the end. Roger Burnley, you've championed yourself. Now we know who you've become. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, and your energy with me today.